What are dimorphic fungi?
Many fungi, particularly those that cause disease in humans, are dimorphic, that is, they have two forms. In response to changes in temperature, nutrients, or other environmental factors, they can change from a yeast form to a mold form.
What differences are there between cellular slime molds and plasmodial slime molds?
Although both are called slime molds, cellular and plasmodial slime molds have few features in common and differ in their life cycles. Cellular slime molds are similar to amoebas. They move, feed, and reproduce as a single cell. Plasmodial slime molds, Plasmodium, consist of a multinucleate mass of cytoplasm lacking cell walls.
Which organelle is absent in fungi?
Centrioles, which divide and organize the spindle filters during mitosis and meiosis, are lacking in all fungi. The nuclear envelope does not break down and reform. Instead, a spindle apparatus is formed within the envelope. Fungi regulate the formation of microtubules during mitosis with small amorphous structures called spindle plaques.
What are imperfect fungi?
Imperfect fungi are also called deuteromycetes or conidial fungi. They are an assemblage of distinct fungal species that are known to reproduce only asexually. The sexual reproductive features have not been identified and are not used as the basis for classification. In this group, sexual reproduction has not been observed. Most imperfect fungi are thought to be Ascomycetes that have lost the ability to reproduce sexually. The best known members of the deuteromycetes are the genera Penicillium and Aspergillus. Whenever a mycologist discovers a sexual stage in one of these fungi, the species is reclassified from the imperfect category to a particular phylum. The phylum selected depends on the type of sexual structures.
What toxic substances are produced by mushrooms?
The most toxic substances produced by mushrooms are amatoxins and phallotoxins, both cyclopeptides. These toxins act by interfering with RNA and DNA transcription, inhibiting the formation of new cells. The toxins collect in the liver, ultimately leading to liver failure.
What ciliate characteristics give the impression they are complex organisms? Although they are in fact unicellular,
Ciliates have many specialized organelles within their single cells. These organelles include cilia for locomotion, two types of nuclei, micronuclei and macronuclei. An oral groove to ingest food, food vacuoles for digestion. A contractile vacuole to regulate water balance, and a cytoproct to expel solid waste particles. Species of the genus Paramecium, which are found in fresh water, respond to their environment as if controlled by a nervous system. For example, when they encounter physical barriers, they react by reversing the beating of their cilia in order to proceed in a new direction.
What are the main types of asexual spores?
The main types of asexual spores among the fungi are arthrospores, chlamydospores, sporangiospores, and conidia, from the Greek word konidios, meaning dust. Conidia and sporangiospores are produced from a fruiting body. Neither arthrospores nor chlamydospores involve a fruiting body. Arthrospores, from the Greek term arthro, meaning joint, are formed by fragmentation of the hyphae. Chlamydospores are formed along the margin of the hyphae. They are thick-walled spores.
What do truffles look like?
Truffles have a rather unappealing appearance. They are somewhat round, but irregularly shaped, and have thick, rough, wrinkled skin that varies from off-white to almost black in color. The fruiting bodies present on truffles are fragrant, fleshy structures that usually grow to about the size of a golf ball. They range from white, gray, or brown to nearly black in color. There are nearly 70 known varieties of truffles, but the most desirable is the black truffle, also known as black diamond, that grows in France's Périgord and Quercy regions as well as Italy's Umbria region. The flesh of the black diamond appears to be black, but it is actually dark brown, and contains white striations. The flesh has an aroma that is extremely pungent. The second most popular is the white truffle, actually off-white or beige, of Italy's Piedmont region. Both the aroma and flavor of this truffle are earthy and garlicky. Fresh truffles are available from late fall to midwinter, and can be stored in the refrigerator for up to 3 days.
How do antibiotics destroy an infection?
Antibiotics function by weakening the cell wall, or interfering with the protein synthesis or RNA synthesis of the bacterial cell. For example, penicillin weakens the cell wall to the point that the internal pressure causes the cell to swell and eventually burst. Certain antibiotics are more effective against gram-negative bacteria, while others are more effective against gram-positive bacteria.
What is unusual about the stinkhorn fungus Dictyophora?
The stinkhorn fungus Dictyophora indusiata is one of the world's fastest growing organisms. It pushes out of the ground at a rate of about 0.2 in, 0.5 centimeters, per minute. The growth rate is so fast that a crackling sound can be heard as the tissues of the fungus swell and stretch. During growth, a delicate, net-like veil forms around the fungus, giving this fungus its common name, the Lady of the Veil. The fungus then decomposes and in the process produces a strong odor that is similar to the smell of decaying flesh. This odor attracts flies that crawl over the fungus and collect its spores on their feet. This process ensures that the spores are carried to new areas. Although the odor produced by species of Dictyophora is quite unpleasant, members of this genus are considered delicacies in China, where they are marketed as aphrodisiacs.
What is an example of an antibiotic-resistant pathogen?
Staphylococcus aureus, a bacterium that causes a variety of infections, including urinary tract infections and bacterial pneumonia, became resistant to penicillin 50 years ago. Stronger and more effective antibiotics have been developed to treat staph infections caused by the bacterium.
What antidote is available for mushroom poisoning?
No effective antidote for mushroom poisoning in humans has been discovered. The 138 toxins produced by mushrooms accumulate in the liver and lead to irreversible liver damage. Unfortunately, there may be no indication of poisoning for several hours after ingesting a toxic mushroom. When the symptoms do present, they often resemble typical food poisoning. Liver failure becomes apparent 3 to 6 days after ingesting a poisonous mushroom. Oftentimes a liver transplant may be the only possible form of treatment.
Are all large fungi shaped like mushrooms?
The fruiting bodies of fungi come in a seemingly endless array of forms and colors. Many are variations on the familiar stalk and cap pattern of the common mushrooms sold in stores. Although some have minute spore-bearing pores instead of gills on the undersides of their caps. Many fungi do not resemble mushrooms at all. Puffballs are solid, fleshy spheres. Bird's nest fungi form little cups containing eggs packed with spores. One kind of fungus looks like a head of cauliflower, and others resemble upright, branching clumps of coral. Some protrude from tree trunks like shelves, while others look like glistening blobs of jelly.
How do fungi reproduce?
Fungal reproduction occurs in two different ways: sexually or asexually. Asexual reproduction occurs through fission, budding, or most commonly by spore formation. Sexual reproduction occurs by means that are characteristic for each group. Two types of reproductive structures are found in fungi. Sporangia produce spores, whereas gametangia produce gametes. In order to sexually reproduce, fungi often carry out some type of conjugation. Hyphae of two genetically different mating types come together and fuse, forming a diploid zygote. Most fungi reproduce sexually with nuclear exchange rather than gametes.
What do spores look like?
Spores vary greatly in size, shape, color, and surface texture. They are generally small. On average, they are usually less than 20. And rarely exceed more than 100 micrometers, approximately 1/10 the thickness of a dime.
How are truffles used in cooking?
Dark truffles are generally used to flavor foods such as omelets, polentas, risottos, and sauces. White truffles are usually served raw. They are often grated over foods such as pasta or dishes containing cheese, as their flavors are complementary. They are also added at the last minute to cook dishes.
What are lichens?
Lichens are organisms that grow on rocks, tree branches, and bare ground. They are composed of two different entities living together in a symbiotic relationship. 1. A population of either algal or cyanobacterial cells that are single or filamentous. And 2. Fungi. Lichens do not have roots, stems, flowers, or leaves. The fungal component of a lichen is called the mycobiont, from the Greek terms mykes, which means fungus, and bios, meaning life, and the photosynthetic component is called the photobiont. From the Greek terms photo, meaning light, and bios, meaning life. The scientific name given to the lichen is the name of the fungus and is most often an ascomycete. As the fungus has no chlorophyll, it cannot manufacture its own food, but it can absorb food from algae. Lichens and algae enjoy a symbiotic relationship. Lichens can often be found growing around and on top of algae, providing the algae with protection from the sun, thus decreasing the loss of moisture. Fungi and algae were the first organisms recognized as having a symbiotic relationship. A unique feature of this relationship is that it is so perfectly developed and balanced that the two organisms behave as a single organism.
What are sclerotia?
Sclerotia are the aggregate of hyphae enclosed in thick walls that form a protective covering when conditions, temperature and water, are not conducive for growth. When conditions improve, the sclerotia germinate and produce stalks containing spore-bearing bodies. Ascospores are embedded in the tips of the stalks. When transported by wind, ascospores may land on grasses or grains, especially rye. The sclerotia continue to grow after they have landed on the host plants.
How do bacterial and fungal spores differ?
The main purpose of bacterial spores known as endospores is to protect bacterial cells so they can survive extreme, harsh conditions. Fungi reproduce both sexually and asexually through the formation of spores. Asexual spores are formed by the hyphae of one organism. The organisms that form from these spores are identical to their parents. Sexual spores result from the fusion of nuclei from two strains of the same species of fungus. Organisms from sexual spores derive characteristics from each parent.
Can mushrooms grow up overnight?
A mushroom is only the fruiting body, that is, reproductive structure of a much larger fungus body that grows unseen in rotting logs, rich humus, and dark, damp places. Many familiar mushrooms have fruiting bodies that are fleshy and umbrella-shaped. Warm, damp weather triggers their sudden appearance. Usually first to be noticed are small, round button caps composed of densely packed hyphae. Soon after the outer covering ruptures, the stem elongates, and the cap enlarges to its full size. This entire process can indeed happen overnight.
How were bacteria involved in World War I?
During World War I, the British needed the organic solvents acetone and butanol. Butanol was required for the production of artificial rubber, and acetone was used as a solvent in the manufacture of the smokeless explosive powder cordite. Prior to 1914, acetone was made by the dry heating, pyrolysis, of wood. Between 80 and 100 tons of birch, beech, or maple wood were required to make 1 ton of acetone. When the war broke out, the demand for acetone quickly exceeded the existing world supply. However, by 1915 Chaim Weizmann, 1874–1952, had developed a fermentation process by which the anaerobic bacterium Clostridium acetobutylicum converted 100 tons of molasses or grain into 12 tons of acetone and 24 tons of butanol. British and Canadian breweries were converted into acetone and butanol factories until new fermentation facilities could be constructed. Commercial acetone and butanol were made by this fermentation process until they were replaced by cheaper petrochemicals in the late 1940s and 1950s.
How did the protist Phytophthora infestans influence Irish history?
Phytophthora infestans, one of the potato's most lethal pathogens, causes the late blight of potato disease. This pathogen was responsible for the Irish potato famine of 1845 to 1849. P. Infestans causes the leaves and stem of the potato plant to decay, eventually causing the tuber to stop growing. In addition, the tubers are attacked by the pathogen and rot. It has been estimated that 1.5 million Irish people emigrated from their country and moved to various parts of the world, but most immigrated to the United States. An estimated 400,000 people perished during the famine due to malnutrition.
What are truffles and where do they come from?
Truffles, a delight of gourmets, are arguably the most prized edible fungi. Found mainly in Western Europe. They grow near the roots of trees, particularly oak, but also chestnut, hazel, and beech, in open woodlands. Unlike typical mushrooms, truffles develop 3 to 12 in 7.6 to 30.5 centimeters, underground, making them difficult to find. Truffle hunters use dogs and pigs that have been specially trained to find the flavorful morsels. Both animals have a keen sense of smell and are attracted to the strong, nut-like aroma of truffles. In fact, trained pigs are able to pick up the scent of a truffle from 20 feet 6.1 meters away. After catching a whiff of a truffle's scent, the animals rush to the origin of the aroma and quickly root out the precious prize. Once the truffle is found, the truffle hunter, referred to in French as a trufficulteur, carefully scrapes back the earth to reveal the fungus. Truffles should not be touched by human skin, as doing so can cause the fungus to rot.
What is a fruiting body?
Macrofungi such as mushrooms and toadstools produce fruiting bodies. A fruiting body is a structure that enables the dispersal of spores for reproduction. It is the structure of a fungus that is visible above the ground. Fruiting bodies are found in a variety of shapes, ranging from the common cap and stem mushrooms to the more exotic antler-like, coral-like, cage-like, trumpet-shaped, or club-shaped mushrooms. The method of spore dispersal for the various types of macrofungi is related to the shape of the fruiting body.
Who is considered the father of lichenology?
Eric Ach Arius, 1757 to 1819, is considered the father of lichenology. He was the founder of modern lichen taxonomy. Having described and arranged lichens into 40 distinct genera. His four major works of research: Lichenographum Suaix Prodromus, 1798. Methodus Lichenum, 1803, Lichenographia Universalis, 1810. And Synopsis Methodica Lichenum, 1814, formed the foundations of modern lichenology.